Welcome to another episode of The Grass is Greener. I'm your host, Paul Greene. Today, my guest is Nick Honeyman. Nick is a chef and restaurant owner. He has a restaurant in New Zealand as well as in south of France. And Nick was born in South Africa. He's always had his heart set on being a world-class chef from an early age. Ended up in Sydney from his burning passion for cooking. And he enrolled in a rigorous 4-year cooking a school. So he completed that in under 3 years and then went on to sharpen his skills in some of the city's most luxurious hotels. His next stop was Tokyo. He worked with Chef Sakai Hirotia at his restaurant La Rochelle before spending a year in Paris working for two of the city's most renowned Michelin star chefs, Pascal Barbeau at L'Estrance and Alain Passard at La Arpège. I'm sure I pronounced those perfectly. His culinary excellence did not go unnoticed, being tapped to work under Justin North at Bacchus in Sydney before making his way to New Zealand to work for Simon Wright at the French Cafe, an icon in the Kiwi fine dining scene. So along the way here, he has opened a restaurant, two restaurants. The one in Auckland called Paris Butter. It now has 3 hats, which is, I guess, what's similar or equivalent to a Michelin star. And his seasonal restaurant, Le Petit Lion, nestled in the south of France. And as we're recording this, they have been accepted in Michelin's book. And I believe they're waiting on the Michelin star for the restaurant, which is super cool in the south of France. So the Petite Lion is a restaurant that he runs alongside a model turned restaurant manager and sommelier and his wife, Sina Honeyman, who is one of Kate's dear friends. And this restaurant showcases Nick's thoughtfully crafted cuisine in a countryside setting, bursting with hospitality, family authenticity, and a true love for the local community. So the reason I wanted to share this with you is, Nick, they were visiting us here in Los Angeles, and we went on a car ride to our place in Lake Arrowhead, and as we're driving back, I'm like, I've done one of these road podcasts before, and I really enjoy them. So I turned on my phone, and we just had a little chat about some of his tips, some of the practices of a chef, some things to avoid, a few reasons why to never get into the restaurant business, some warnings, but also some tips and ideas to make your chefing and the meals you make even more fun and bring a little of that vitamin L, the love, into your food. So please enjoy this. Please this conversation I have with Nick Honeyman. Please have a look at some of my sponsors that help pay for this podcast, and also if you could subscribe and share and review, I would really, really appreciate that. And we'll catch you on the other side. All right, enjoy. Awesome, man. So I am driving back from Arrowhead with my buddy Nick Honeyman, and he's here visiting with his wife and 2 girls. And Nick came to Arrowhead today with me. And Nick is a chef. And Nick has a couple restaurants, one in the south of France, and one in Auckland in New Zealand. And one of my favorite things that with this podcast, what I'd like to do is have people on that really interest me. And Nick and I have had so many conversations in the last couple of days where I'm like, shoot, I wish I was recording that. So I'm just going to throw this thing on, ask Nick a few questions, and just get a little bit of a background on what he does. So Nick has a really unique approach to food, and like he just told me all this stuff about living in Japan and working with a Japanese chef for 6 years and you were with the Iron Chef guy for 2 years in Japan?
6 months in Tokyo.
6 months in Tokyo. So your restaurant, let's start with Le Petit Lion in the south of France. How did that come to be? Like, was the restaurant in New Zealand first, or was that restaurant in the south of France first?
That's a good question. They were almost simultaneous. They happened side by side. It was just a complete coincidence. So Le Petit Lion, I had connections to that before Paris Butter. But in the same year, we pretty much bought Paris Butter and then had an opportunity to buy a restaurant in France. So yeah, they coincided. And they're on polar opposite ends of the earth, but it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah. Logistically, I can't even imagine. So you obviously have partners in both, or just partners, or no partners now?
So in France, it's just me and my wife, Sina. In New Zealand, I've got one business partner. He's 50%, and he's a silent partner, which has always been it's a good financial support to have. It's really nice to have somebody in the business who's not so emotionally involved in food and being in a restaurant, because honestly, a restaurant is the quickest way to lose your money, without a doubt.
Yeah. What's the statistic on how many fail? It's insane, right?
And the average age of the restaurants in New Zealand is about 2.5 years. That's the average length that they're open.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long has Paris Butter been open?
We're coming into our 6th year.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Good. And why did you call it Paris Butter?
Well, we first opened Paris Butter. I've been cooking for 20 years by that time. And so I opened it for the wrong reasons. And it was opened as a classic French bistro. And I was just like, there's no French bistros around. This is going to be a good money maker. It's a good business model. Let's do that. It's the absolute worst reason to open a restaurant. Never ever do it because you think it's going to be a good business. But we did it. And I was in France at the time, traveling while we were still working out Paris Butter, and I was on a train trying to work out the name, and I wanted something catchy. And classic French bistros is you go and have a steak, frites, and on top of it comes Café de Paris, and in English kitchens you call that Paris Butter. So that's what that was. So one of our signature dishes to begin with was a steak with Paris Butter, Café de Paris.
What is Paris Butter? Is it just like a French butter?
Exactly, it's a butter. It's got about 26 ingredients in it, heavily herbed with tarragon and parsley, and then you've got touches of curry powder and yeah.
So Paris Butter is actually a type of butter that has 26 ingredients in it?
Yep.
I never knew that. Just one of the many things I don't know. How then did you get your start with food? You've been chefing for 20 years. Are you 40 yet?
40, yeah.
You're 40. So you've been chefing for 20 years. How did you get started and how did it all begin for you?
So I finished school in South Africa, and in Cape Town pretty much everyone goes from school to uni, and you pick something off a piece of paper that you think is going to be good. So I'd enrolled to do architecture because I was like, oh yeah, I kind of enjoy math, I kind of enjoy art, seems like a good choice. Then my parents gave me some magnificent advice, and they said, we don't love our jobs, and we would like for you to find something that you love doing. And when we were your age, we travelled. So they bought me a round the world ticket, and I think that they thought it was going to sort me out and put me on the right track, but it set me in a different direction. So I travelled the world and I worked in kitchens to make money, fell in love with cooking, went back to South Africa and told them I was going to go to Australia to study cooking, and they said, are you sure? And I said, yep. So what backfired with them was just always my driving force.
Yeah.
They were just so supportive for me finding something that I'd love to do, and I was just drawn to it. I remember the first place I was at that I really fell in love with I was washing dishes. And
what country?
In Perth, in Australia.
Okay.
And it was this busy restaurant, high-end cafe, just making like solid pastas, risottos, but the kitchen was humming. There was 10 chefs cooking, and then during the middle of service, this red sports car rocked up behind the kitchen, door flung open, and the kitchen went silent. And I was like, who's that guy? And that was the head chef. And I was just like, I want to be that guy. It was just the energy of the place, and the guys, the stress, and there was just something that I was drawn to about it. I was also drawn to the militaristic style and structure of a kitchen. Very early age, I could see that there was a clear path to the top, and it was just step by step by step. You started off with an apprenticeship that was 4 years, then you go commis chef, demi chef, chef de partie, sous chef, head chef, executive chef, and I was like, cool. It was just, it fitted for me. And it was this job that was hard yakka, but your hands are always moving. I've only discovered later in life how important that is for me. As soon as my hands stop moving, my mind becomes a lot darker and cloudier. Yeah, and so it was just kind of a... But I'm not sure that I loved food in the beginning as much as I do now. It was an acquired love. I just loved the energy of it. For the first 5 years, I didn't know what a Michelin star was. I didn't know what fine dining was. I just liked the structure of it. I liked the progression and the perfectionism of learning. Yeah.
And your restaurant now is up for a Michelin star. It has the equivalent of a Michelin star in France. What's that called?
In France, we've just had the Michelin Guide in, so they've put us in as a new restaurant. I guess that comes out in March, so we'll see whether we made the cut. In New Zealand, we have the equivalent of 2 stars, which is really cool. Like I said, we started off as a classic French bistro, and then actually, I started in the early days when I was dating my now wife. When she would come into the restaurant, I would always make her different things, and it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And then she said to me, she said, "Why have you got a restaurant and you're not making the food you love?" I said, "I don't know." So overnight, we changed it. I flipped the menu from bistro and we went back to fine dining, which was my passion. And it was very difficult. It was normally you should rebrand, you should take more time in doing it, but there was no way around making it easy, so we just did it. And then a couple of years later, it just kind of fell into its stride, and now it is what it is today.
And you don't make a dish that you don't love, right? Like, you only make food that you love. Is that true?
Absolutely. So we don't have big menus. In fact, we have 2 choice menus. Either doing 5 courses or 8 courses. When you come in, you tell us what you like. If you have dislikes, and we'll change it, or allergies. But for me, one of the important things is I can't cook you a dish that I wouldn't eat myself. So there's not a single ingredient in the restaurant that I won't eat or that I don't like. And at the beginning, it seemed quite limiting. Like, I don't love lamb. And being in New Zealand, not to have lamb on the menu...
And last night, we made the best lamb ever. And in the way you showed me to make it, I'd never done it that way, where we reverse cooked the lamb, where we lightly seasoned it and then put it on the rack in the oven above the dripping pan for 15 minutes on each side ish at I think around 375, and then what you did in the skillet with the fat and the rosemary and the garlic and then just the flavor of it and the softness of it was just incredible. And you don't like eating? Did you like the lamb we had last night?
I liked it.
You didn't love it?
Didn't love it.
Got it. Okay.
And I guess,
loved it.
Yeah, they're good. We're just in the business of putting 110% on every plate.
So what's made you guys successful to be able to last in 2 different continents for 6 years and to have the equivalent of 2 Michelin stars in New Zealand, and now you're possibly up for one in France? Like, what's allowed you guys to be successful when so many fail?
Staff. Staff, without a doubt. Like, really? As soon as you realize that you are nothing without your staff, you have taken your first step to success. Like, it doesn't matter from the top to the bottom. Everybody has their part. And we were one of the first to introduce a even scale tipping system in France. So where we are, the customers, a lot of them are on holiday, they tip really well, and historically it'll be the waiters who take most of the tips, and there'll be 1 portion out of that for the kitchen, which gets split amongst 8. And we said no. Like, everybody here is hired with their wage at the beginning of the season and their contracts, so you know your place. So then tips need to be split equally from the dishwasher to the head waiter to the head chef. And I think that philosophy, it runs deep. You know, everybody has their position and their job, and they're all equally important. Some are more skilled, but you pay them more.
Yeah, but the tips, is that an unusual thing to do in the kitchen?
Yeah, I think so.
Or in like a restaurant?
Definitely. It depends which continent you're in. I mean, I think in the States, historically, you would hire waiters on a lot less than you would chefs. And so they were working for their tips. And it was an easy call for me to make because I was a chef owner. And I was like, okay, I'm glad that you gave good service, but, you know, they wanted all of these changes on their dishes. Who did those changes? It was like the guys in the kitchen. So they made you look good, but you're not sharing the tips with them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so have you avoided like the toxic environment? Because sometimes restaurants can be like a very dismal, like your experience in Japan, what you were sharing with me was, you know, was just very serious and very quiet, and it's partly because of the language barrier, but like just how do you make sure that the environment is because your staff obviously have to enjoy themselves a little bit, right, or a lot, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if your team is not engaged, you're never going to have a great product. But every restaurant that I'd worked in, well, most of them, the environment was quite toxic. We'd do 80-hour weeks.
Is there a lot of cocaine?
It depends which continent you are in. Cocaine's normally an expensive drug, so it's not the chef's. It would be the chef's first choice, but it's not what they get.
I'd always heard that it's a heavy coke culture with the long hours and chefs.
Yeah, definitely alcoholism. The cheaper drugs like ecstasy are problems in kitchens, and
really,
you're working 80 hours a week. You've completely sacrificed your social life, and so the chance that you do get to work, you're so tired, and you get caught into this world of wanting to go out every week and arriving at a party at midnight. Everybody else is off their face, and trying to catch up, and it's not an easy world to submit to.
Right. What do you think the thing that people misunderstand the most about the restaurant culture?
I think they people who work in restaurants are passionate people, and people who work in restaurants, they love it's a difficult question actually, but when you're working in a restaurant, it's kind of like you've been hanging out with your mates the whole time. So when somebody finishes at a restaurant, you're quite tired from being so personable, so it's quite easy to go and you want some quiet time, some alone time. I think partners of chefs especially, it'd be a Sunday and they're like, come, let's go out, let's have a dinner party, let's invite friends over, but you've pretty much been socializing for 80 hours.
And cooking for it.
And cooking. So the thought of doing it again is, yeah.
And like getting all the food and the pressure of cooking for your friends.
But I think also what people misunderstand about restaurants is we don't always get it right. And it's a very hard thing to do because cooking is so personal. I mean, there's so many different levels of restaurants. And at any given time, you're going to have a different opinion about your meal. Whether you're tired, whether you're a little bit sick, there's so many different things. It depends what mood you're in. If you're in, take a glass of red wine, the same bottle every week, and you didn't change it, it would taste different every week depending on your mood. But it's like that with a meal. And I watched Taylor Swift's documentary not too long ago, and I just found some of the things that she said were incredible. They're so profound. She said that, when you play a concert, and you'll understand this, when you play a concert, you're playing one concert to 50,000 people. One. They're all getting the same experience from you, but no one is having the same experience.
So true.
That's mind-blowing.
And that's the same as a restaurant.
Well, the restaurant is like that, except you're playing 50 concerts a night.
Yeah.
and everyone is having different experiences, and then everyone is leaving reviews. We're just like, you would know, like, you read a bad review, it makes you crawl. Like, it's you hang on every bad word, and I think we're left so far open towards that. Also, because somebody goes to a concert, most of the people who go to a concert can't play an instrument or can't sing, but most of the people who go to a restaurant can cook. So it's it's tough. It's you've got to have your wits about you.
I bet. And you, even though your reviews are probably 1,000 to 1 positive to negative, why do you think that you focus, and you don't even barely read the positive ones, you sort of skim over it? Why? But you hang on every word of the negative reviews. Why do you think that is?
It's probably a flaw within myself. I use it. I find that one of the best tools for me to get better is to try and filter these reviews out and take something positive from them, which is something that's not easy to do. I think TripAdvisor is a great one. I feel like it's the leveler. It's the one review platform that reviews money against quality. Like, you could go to a restaurant on TripAdvisor that's at the top and have plastic seats, plastic table, and if it's number 1, you're going to have an excellent experience. Number 2 might be fine dining and you're paying 500 euros for it, but you're also going to have an excellent experience. So, and everyone who's going there is leaving a review, no matter what their history with food is. So they might have good comments, they might have valid comments, they might not. But as soon as we started reading through all of them, you can start to see patterns. You'll be like, okay, maybe it's not the product that's wrong, it's how we're delivering our product, and it's our communication. Like, generally when somebody has a problem at a restaurant, it's because something hasn't been communicated properly. We had at a restaurant half an hour ago, and you asked the waitress, you got excited about frosted glasses. Now, she said they were frosted, but when they came out, they weren't. Well, wasn't even close to being, but she just said yes. It was a communication issue. Had she said no, you still would have had it, and you wouldn't have faulted her on it.
Right, they were cold, which was, they must just not have gotten quite to the temperature enough. And when we shared a beer, and when you put the beer in it, it kind of had that frosty vibe. So it wasn't. Her service was so good all around.
Yeah.
That I was looking for a big old frosty mug though. That would have been communication. I mean, that must be tricky to be working, because you work with your wife inside of the restaurant environment. Communication with her must be really important too. And it's so, like, she wasn't always working with you. How did all that come together? So, because right now she's German and she's trained in French as a sommelier, and she has 2 levels in French. Is that right?
She's got her 3rd level of somm, and she did them in New Zealand. So,
in English.
Yeah, in English, and in France she serves in French, and New Zealand in English. She's incredible. But when she came into the business, it was just a natural progression. I learned how to listen to my staff, because all of a sudden I had somebody in my business who was questioning me on everything, and it's so easy to turn down questions because you can just make a decision in your mind. You're like, no, that's not going to work. Yeah, no, sorry. What was an example? She came to me we had roasted beetroots on the menu, and we had this beetroot trim, and she's like, why don't you turn this into a beetroot ice cream? And it was kind of in the middle of a busy day, and there was so much going on. I just wanted to, like, yeah, whatever, just go away. That's not going to be good. But because it was my wife, or she was my fiance at that time, I was like, okay, I'm going to listen. And I said, do you want to make one for me? And then she made it, and then it was amazing. And from there we evolved, and we do projects every week. So every Saturday night in both restaurants, the team have got 1 week to come up with a project. Normally, front of house they will present a wine or a cocktail, and the kitchen team will make a dish. Now, what this has done is it means that instead of people coming up to you with ideas that you can just knock back quickly, they've gone to the effort to make something or present something, and you taste it and you try it. So I'm not tasting in my mind what I thought their idea would be like. I'm literally tasting it, and because their idea is not the same as mine, it tastes nothing like what I thought they'd presented. And all of a sudden your creative process has gone the whole way through your team, and you're not just one person being creative, the whole team is being creative. And our evolution as a business quickly upscaled, and then the staff started producing these dishes that were virtual restaurant dishes, and they might have needed one or few tweaks, and they're on the menu. Then they're invested in it because they can see parts of what they're doing. And for me, that your initial question is, how did we balance both? And I said staff. We now have staff who are really invested into our businesses, and they're invested into what we believe.
And they got skin in the game, so they're excited probably to come to work. You're not just like this celebrity chef that's at the top of the heap telling them what to do, and them resenting you, or like, that's really it must be so. I mean, how does it differ from being a father? So you're a father to two girls, and so before your two girls, you were like, people must look up to the head chef as a father figure. So what are some of the similarities between like being a head chef in a restaurant, and what skills from that have you taken to being a dad?
Oh, I don't know what skills I've taken that way. I think that being a dad has completely chilled me out.
Really? Yeah. Chilled you out?
It's definitely made cooking easier, because my whole life I thought that I was defined by cooking. I was Nick the chef, and that's what I thought of who I was. And then I got married, and a big part of me is like, okay, I have a bigger purpose. I'm a husband too, but there was still this one thing that defined me. Now I'm Nick the dad, and I'm a dad to the two girls, and cooking is just something that I do. So there's not as much pressure on it for me anymore. I feel like I've fulfilled my life's dreams by being a dad to these girls, and it hasn't been easy. I've had to make more sacrifices within work. I can't be as selfish anymore. But my main focus is the family. Yeah. And we've tried hard now to make the businesses work around that. We opened the restaurant in France at 7:30 p.m. In New Zealand a little bit earlier, but we've done that so we can put the girls to bed. We can see them to bed before we start our dinner service. And the philosophy behind that was if this business isn't going to work for us and our family, then what's the point in doing it? I don't need to be a high-flying chef to make me feel like I'm a good person or accomplished. I need to be a good dad. So imagine missing dinner with my girls every night. Am I being a good dad? No, well, not in my eyes. Right. Does it surprise you how much the love of your girls, like, did being a dad surprise you? Did you have any did you expect this journey to be what it is being a dad? Because like obviously it's new, and it's exciting, and it's like so much love, and it's like unconditional love, but like what was your did you ever imagine it being a dad would be like this? Easy answer, no. I had no idea. I can't even explain to you. It was just I don't want to say I was ticking a box, because it was definitely felt like the right thing to do. Yeah. And I met the woman of my life that I would love to have kids with. I just didn't expect how fulfilling it was going to be, and I didn't even foresee. I couldn't fathom the love that these girls have brought to me. Yeah. And after you had one, like, I was just like, my heart is full. I didn't know what number two would be like. And some days your heart's sore, because you just have so much love.
Yeah, It's so special. Like, I have two kids, obviously, that are 20 years apart, but my littlest one started walking yesterday, mostly because hanging around your littlest one and watching her take those steps and seeing what's possible for Austin to now he took like 10 steps yesterday, which is wild. Who's been the biggest influence on you in the chefing world? Like, is there a person, like a mentor you've had that's been like...
I think there's been quite a few along the way. I worked for a Chinese chef in the beginning, and he said to me one day, he's like, look, you're going to need to go somewhere else because you need to carry on learning. You need to go somewhere better. And I didn't understand. I was like, come on, we're good mates. I was cushy. I was finding it easy. And he saw that. And I think that was probably one of the greatest influences I had. He became a friend, and his name was Gavin Wu, and it was what he did didn't benefit him. It was purely benefiting me because I'd worked for him for 2 years. He'd trained me up. It was just him and I in the kitchen, and he would have had to have found somebody else, started from the beginning, and then it followed suit. I then worked for a Japanese guy who connected me to Japan, and then he connected me to France, and then the chef in France, Pascal. When I arrived there, I worked for him for 4 months, just a stage. He said, you're here to learn the French culture, not about food. So he made me go to French school, and that was my form of payment. It was at one of the top 10 restaurants of the world at the time, and so none of the staff that was staging there got paid. I think there were 10 staff and 3 were paid, but he paid us all differently in different ways, and it was just the way that it was. So I went to French lessons, but simultaneously he also said, look, there's a summer holiday coming up. You should go to the south of France where no one speaks English. I have a customer who has a restaurant there, and that was Le Petit Lion. So I went and did a 3-week season for the people that owned Petit Lion, and I ended up staying in touch with the guy who owned the land, the landlord, and lo and behold, 15 years later, we bought it.
15 years later.
Yeah.
Wow. And you bought it from those same owners?
Well, we bought it from the landlord. So the landlord had another chef in there before that he was kind of doing business with. And he emailed me one day and he's like, am I either going to sell it or would you like to come and do business with me?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's from a 3-week, you must have left an impression on him.
Maybe.
Maybe. I love it, man. So what do you think that people, like with food, everyone like I cook a certain way, right? And while you're here, I'm asking you all these things, like how do I do this and how do you do this, like, so because I want to learn your way. What's a couple, just like something you can tell my listeners that if they could put this into place, that it would help their kitchen game, like dramatic? What's a few just easy, the first top of your mind, like do this in the kitchen and it'll make a big difference? Like the way you taught me with eggs. Like I had never whipped eggs with a little bit of water and a little bit of olive oil and seasoning, right? You told me to season it later, not everyone seasons it too early. Like that's a huge something. What's something else like that you can share?
The hard thing is that I have this knowledge that I don't know how to transform into your knowledge. But the biggest thing is that the difference between you and I is that I've made the same thing 1,000 times over. So I've learned from my mistakes. So my biggest piece of advice would be, for savory recipes especially, I go to houses and people are cooking, they've got savory recipes marked out in their books, and they'll look at the savory recipe every time that they cook it. Cakes and desserts, you need a recipe. But for everything else, cook it once from the book, then try and remember it and cook it a few times, and you're going to learn from your mistakes because it'll be different every time. And eventually you build up this encyclopedia of taste profiles in your head, and you start building dishes by taste profiles. So the eggs, for example, putting salt into eggs. When you're whisking eggs and you put salt into them, straight away it draws the moisture out of the eggs. But I learned that because I've cooked millions of eggs.
Right.
Yeah. Biggest tips.
Yeah, like what about like with heat and like...
Okay, the biggest tip is don't forget that one of the cooking processes is using your ears.
Oh, your ears and your hands, right? Like you touch it.
Anything into a pan and you don't hear it, take it out. Your pan's too cold.
Is that right?
Of course. Like as soon as you put anything to a pan, it should sizzle. You should hear a noise.
I did not know that.
It's just common sense. If you're using induction, same. If you're using gas, even better. Take note of where the flame is at all time.
Right.
You never want to be cooking something on full pelt, ever.
Right.
You just want to take your time. Cook everything that we cook is at room temperature.
Not straight out the fridge.
Not straight out of the fridge.
Okay, so temperature is so important,
Yeah.
especially meat, right?
Just prepare yourself before you're cooking for the evening. Pull everything you want out of the fridge. Have a little thought about what things you can multitask with. Multitasking is what's going to help you. It's also going to be how you make your mistakes, because you'll forget things, but you'll get better at it.
Yeah. Like what? How do you multitask? What do you mean?
Like you've got something boiling, you've got something baking, you're chopping something.
Yeah. Okay.
Like there's no point in going and chopping all of your parsley is your first job, and then going to turn the oven on, and then you're putting your water on. Just
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, I tend to do that where I get so many things going at once. I'm like, what am I doing? There's like 10 things happening at once.
And also tastes. I told you the other day, like have a spoon with you all the time, and anything and everything that you're cooking, just feel it and taste it, because you need to learn in your mind how things are going to be.
Yeah. And we were talking the other day when I was putting together a sauce for the chicken after we had made the chicken, and I wanted to take like sriracha and mix it with some of the drippings, right, from the bird. And we were talking about how important it was to add some sweetness to it, which I had never done, like a little honey, and because it has a spice, but then and it has a salt. But like, how do you know? I guess you just by trial and error, right? Like, how do you know if you need more pungent or more astringent? Like, how is that just something that comes with practice?
Of course, it comes with making mistakes, and it comes with tasting, and it comes with confidence. But
right.
You need to keep doing it over and over again.
It's so interesting. I like cooking. For me is like, it's so fun. I get so much joy out of cooking for other people, less like for myself. Do you enjoy cooking for yourself, or not so much?
I enjoy cooking for the art of cooking.
Really? Like if you don't have an audience, you still will cook something awesome?
You know, I like cooking for small groups.
Yes. Yes.
But I much prefer cooking for the art of cooking. I love making perfect things, and then I love eating.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I love most. Hosting and doing like parties of 8 to 10, it's not really my jam. It's funny, my wife is the opposite, and she's probably a lot like you, whereas she loves to feed people. She likes to make people happy through food.
Right.
Whereas for me, talking to somebody throughout their meal, it's my worst nightmare. It's like standing in an art gallery and I've just put a painting on the wall and I'm standing around with everybody talking about what they see. I'm just happy to know that they enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it's not what drives me.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting.
I love the base of cooking. I love finding the ingredients. I love meeting the producers who make the ingredients. When you go to the grocery store and finding these small producers that are so passionate. I love passionate people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do. If you're passionate about something, I'm just going to be drawn towards you.
Right.
And I think that we find so many passionate people in the food industry, farmers, producers. And that's the first part of the journey for me, is finding the ingredients. Your food is never going to be good if your ingredients are not good. And if something is out of season, don't put it in there just because it's in the recipe. Like, try and be responsible with it. Like, find something that's local to you. Find something that's in season.
Yeah. Like, how could you swap something out? Let's say, Let's say there's no tomatoes aren't in season, but the recipe calls for it. What do you do?
Leave them out. Taste it. See what else have you got.
Right. What else could
Change
you
the recipe.
change it up?
Tomatoes, that's a hard one.
That's a hard one. I gave you the hardest one.
Pretty unique, but I mean, fruit is very diverse.
Yeah.
You're looking for the same sweetness and acidity levels. I mean, courgettes are a good supplement for tomatoes. You can get them to the same texture. You can...
Yeah. Such a journey, man. Like, I love cooking, right? And I love making things, but if someone has said to me, you should make you should make a restaurant, and it's the last thing that I would want to do. Like, it just seems to me like the most work ever, and all that kind of fun and sexiness that I love about doing it for fun would go away because I would have to do it. And then people would, if they returned it, like, or they didn't like it, I'd be so offended. I am not cut out. I don't think I'm cut out to own a restaurant. It's not for the faint of heart, is it?
I think that I'm also, that's probably my worst scenario is customers are the hardest part to deal with. But I also discovered halfway through my career I like to teach, and I like people management, and I love the psychology of people, and in hospitality you've got so many different characters who are all like the workplace in a restaurant is so much more real than the workplace in an office. You know, I'll come home and I'll tell Sina the conversations that I've had with the staff, and they're just so real and down to earth. Whereas in an office environment, you talk about the weather, it's not as personal. Whereas the kitchen especially is very raw, very personal.
Yeah.
And we're all they're doing something that we love.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
The next is finding the balance, I guess. Progression. Progression interests me. It never interests me to do the same thing twice. So every year we change the menu often. But now I think the hardest thing is how do you balance the work life, the family life, the mental health, and also our industry is completely broken.
How?
We started off with 80-hour weeks, and that's just how restaurants work. It's very difficult to run a restaurant on 36 hours a week, which is what you have to work in France.
What do you mean you have to work that in France?
Well, you can't legally work more than that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, the salaries are 36 to 38 hours. After that, there's serious amounts of overtime, but they're quite strict. And so it's trying to make a business model that fits into that. The hard thing with that is that if you and I were hired to do the same job, I'd be a lot quicker at it than you. Right. So how do you monetize that? But also it's a stressful environment.
Sure.
And we're working with fragile personalities. That's most of the people who are drawn to cooking and to restaurants are creatives. And we don't have very thick skin. So it's trying to find this balancing act, and I think that mental health is something's on the forefront of everyone's mind, and a balance of life, especially after COVID.
Yeah, and okay. Here's the Grand Blanc that I was telling you about, Grand Blanco, and there's the Great White. We're at the Venice sign here in Venice. Two good restaurants right here. Yeah, with COVID, mental health's at the front, but I think people don't necessarily think about kitchens. They're just like, give me my food. They don't necessarily think about the culture, the environment, or that what must go on, like, and how early people have to get up to the farmer's market to make sure that food's there. It is like, how does someone get to be successful at it?
Not sure. I'm not sure.
Like, it sounds like you figured it out for it to still be going after 6 years, and
I think
you guys had every night sold out, right? Just about?
Yeah, we had a fantastic season. And you just got to keep going at it. I think you've got to keep being dynamic, diverse, open to learning. We're never going to say, okay, we've learned everything where there is to learn.
Right,
we're not going to change. we're always of the mindset, what can we learn today? What can we change today?
Huh, wow.
That was the most beautiful thing about owning the restaurants for the first time. Petite with Sina is that every night that we'd finish, we'd be like, what should we change tomorrow?
Really?
Just change stuff. Like we'd rip tables out. We'd do drastic things. Like, okay, we're going to change the logo tomorrow. We're going to change this tomorrow. We're going to change the uniform. We just do anything and everything.
Wow.
Because it was progression.
Yeah.
We're going to open the restaurant half an hour late. We're going to take away the menu choice. I mean, that was a massive one. Taking away menu choice was huge.
Was that some people probably really didn't like that, huh?
No. I mean, it's people who didn't know us too, and before we had a reputation, it's hard to walk into somewhere without a reputation and put full faith into them. It was, yeah. So we had a 4 and an 8 course choice, and after people had started their 4 course menu, they would ask to change to the 8. And it just told us, it's like, okay, they just weren't ready for us yet, but they're sitting there and they've changed their mind because they can feel the energy of what we're doing, which was really cool. That was super humbling.
And so doing what you love seems to be like very, very important for you. It's like, it seems like a guiding force for you is do the things that you love.
Yeah, I think we started this conversation off with that, and I haven't really put those two building blocks together yet, but I think that advice that my parents gave to me all those years ago was find something you love to do and work hard at it. And it probably couldn't be better advice out there, because I don't feel like what I do is work.
Even as hard as you work?
No, there's not a day that I go to work and go, oh, this is work. I mean, I love it so much.
Wow, I love that. Well, I think that's a great place to end this. Just do what you love and work hard at that thing. Like, just keep doing it until it, and I think it's because have you ever thought of your why, like why you're doing it? No. I mean, other than because you love it, right? You're doing it. That's one of the reasons you're doing it. But I mean, like, because when the going gets really tough, like, what keeps you going? Just your love for it.
I think I've always been good at setting goals. So like when I've worked in places that I've hated, I've always been there for a reason. And in any job that you're ever in, and I tell this to all of my staff members, I said, if it comes to the day that you're here and you're not getting as much out of this as you're giving, then come and talk to me, because we need to change. And that should be a life philosophy for everyone. Work, you should be getting something out of it. Something should be fulfilling you. Yeah. And whether that is, for you, that is money and it's the paycheck at the end of the week, or whether you need something more, there just needs to be that constant balance.
Yeah, man, I love that. I think that's a great place to end. Do what you love and work hard at it. Thanks, man.
Pleasure.
It's really, really cool getting to know sort of a little bit of the inner workings of this and your mind, and also just like what's up for your restaurants and your amazing food. I'm so lucky to have you staying with us so I can ask you all these questions like on how to make something better. So if someone's in the south of France, the town is called Saint-Léon-Vissery?
Saint-Léon-sur-Vézère.
Okay, good. And the restaurant's Le Petit Lion.
Le Petit Lion.
And if they're in Auckland to come by your restaurant, that is?
Paris Butter.
Okay. And on social media, do you have both of those restaurants there?
Both there, and I'm Chef Honeyman.
All right. Just how it sounds, Chef Honeyman. Honeyman. Good. Honeyman, thanks so much, man, for being on my podcast. And if you are in those countries, go see his restaurants and enjoy. All right. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to this conversation with Nick and I. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope if you're ever in New Zealand or if you're in the south of France that you do go check out his restaurants as well. The Instagram Paris Butter is just super inspiring to watch, the stuff that Nick creates. I'm not sure if the Petit Lion has their own social media, but I wouldn't doubt it if they did. I'm going to provide a link in the notes to a few really interesting articles and some goodies, so you can, if you want to look into that a little bit more, and you want to visit these restaurants, I'm sure they would love that. And make sure you tell them Paul sent you there. And until I see you next time, be kind and gentle and tender and loving toward yourself and your thoughts on purpose. And please remember to enjoy this life, because you have a choice. And I hope to catch you really soon here on The Grass is Greener. As always, please subscribe and share and review and all that fun stuff. And we'll catch you really soon. All right. Take care.
Father's arms I'll be. The wounds this world left on my soul, I'll be healed and I'll be whole. Sun and moon will be replaced with the light of Jesus' face, and I will not be ashamed, for my Savior knows my name. And it don't matter where you bury me, I'll be home and I'll be free. It don't matter where I lay, all my tears be washed away. Silver blind the eye, temporary riches lie. So come and eat from heaven's store, come and drink and thirst no more. So weep not for me, my friend, when my time below does end. For my life belongs to Him who will raise the dead again. And it don't matter where you bury me, I'll be home and I'll be free. It don't matter where I lay, all my tears be washed away. It don't matter where you bury me, I'll be home and I'll be free. And it don't matter where I lay, all my tears be washed away, all my tears be washed